Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. How are you all doing? Welcome to Easy Economics. Well, as you all requested, today here I am solving with you all IGCSE paper May June 2023, variant 13. So let's begin. All right. MCQ number 1. The first MCQ says GDP per capita in Switzerland is high. What is the reason why Swiss citizens still face the basic economic problem? Now, they're saying, in spite of the fact that it's Switzerland and the GDP per capita is high, still the citizens need to face the basic economic problem. Can anybody recall for me what is basic economic problem? Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. Exactly. Basic economic problem talks about unlimited wants exceeding finite resources. Remember, scarcity issues occur. Why? Because we are not able to satisfy everyone's want because of scarcity, because of scarce resources. All right. So, what should be the reason behind the basic economic problem there? A says income in Switzerland is unevenly distributed. B says inflation in Switzerland is high. C says Swiss citizens expect high living standards. And D says Swiss citizens have to make choices in consumption. Exactly. It has to be D when you need to make decisions. Why? Because your wants are unlimited. However, your resources are limited. So you need to make a decision. You need to decide. So for one, it has to be D. Number 2, the PPC of a country has shifted from PPC 1 to PPC 2. Now the figure shows on the vertical axis, there's capital goods. On the horizontal axis, there's consumer goods. Now what is happening? The entire PPC is shifting outwards towards the right. Now we all know whenever there is a shift of the PPC towards the right, it could be either of the situations or maybe perhaps both. How? There would either be an increase in the quantity of the goods in the resources or the quality of the resources. So the PPC shifts outwards either when there is an increase in the quantity or the quality of the resources, right? Or it could be a combination of both. Now they're saying what could have caused this shift? A says a decrease in the rate of unemployment. B says a fall in the birth rate. C says improved education. And D says outdated technology not being replaced. Now, beginning from D, outdated technology not being replaced, it is negating a situation the PPC would not have shifted outwards, right? Because the technology is being outdated and not being replaced. So, how can it cause an increase in the quality or the quantity of the resources? It cannot increase the productive potential of the economy. What is the figure depicting? That there has been a rise in the productive potential of the economy. So, D is negating the situation. So, we'll chop D off. B says a fall in the birth rate. Now, if there's a fall in the birth rate, the population is not going to expand. There's not an increase in the productive potential of the economy, not an increase in the resources available in the economy or the factors of production in the economy on the quantity of the resources available. No, so the PPC, it has to, it will, you will chop it off. A says a decrease in the rate of unemployment. Now, had there been unemployed resources in the economy, had there been unemployed resources in the economy would have been somewhere inside. Let's say this is an X. So if there would have been unemployed resources in the economy, utilization of those resources would mean you are utilizing the unused capacity. And in that situation, you would have moved from point X on the PPC. So you would have been on the first PPC only, but it would rather have been a movement from the inside of the curve towards on the PPC. It would not have caused a shift. Why? Because there would have been unemployed resource in this situation. But when we are talking about a shift of the PPC, there has to be a discovery of the new resources. So you see, what I'm trying to say is either there has to be an increase in the quantity or the quality of the resources. But existence of unemployed resources means you would initially would have been somewhere inside the PPC, and then utilization of those resources would have meant leaving you eventually at a point on the PPC, right? Would have not caused a shift in the PPC. Now, do you understand why it won't be A? Why the answer won't be A in this case? All right. Yes, the correct answer is C because of improved education, improvement in the quality of the resources, hence leading to a shift of the PPC towards the right. All right. 2 has to be C. I'm glad you all understood. Number 3. Number 3 says what is most likely to increase the geographical mobility of labor. Now, what are you doing? You are actually improving upon the mobility of labor. You are making the labor being able to go for vacancies, to able to go for applying jobs in far-flung areas, right? So which of the factor would contribute towards increasing the geographical mobility of labor? A says an increase in the amount of credit available to firms. Increase in the amount of credit available to firms would actually increase the productive potential of the firms. It would lead to the firms increasing their production. It has nothing to do with the mobility of the labor. The firms would increase their scales of operation. So you'll chop A off. B says an increase in the quantity of low-cost housing. Yes, that's the answer. I'm going to explain in a while why that's the answer. So B is the correct answer. C says an increase in spending by firms on research and development. Again, if the firm is spending on research and development, so the firm is improving upon its production process, the quality of its output. So it has nothing, it might be reducing its cost of production this way or improving the quality of its goods, but it has nothing to do with the geographical mobility of labor. So you chop it off. D says an increase in spending by government on apprenticeships and training. Yes, it has to do with the mobility of labor, but it has to do with the occupational mobility of labor. You are making your labor more skilled. You are giving more training to your labor. So it has nothing to do with the geographical mobility of labor. So it has to be B. Why? Because when the provision of low-cost housing is being available to the labor force, they can easily opt for jobs available in far-flung areas. So housing would not be an issue that they would need to consider before applying for vacancies out there. So you are actually increasing the geographical mobility of labor by making the provision of low-cost housing accessible. All right, so 3 has to be B. Number 4, what is not a microeconomic decision? What is not a microeconomic decision? We all know what is microeconomic considers. Yes, microeconomic considers the study of behavior or the decisions of individual firms, households, and markets, right? And what does macro considers? The study of the whole economy. So they're saying what is not a microeconomic decision means it has to be a macro decision, right? A firm decides to increase the price of its product. You're talking about an individual firm, so it's a micro. C says a household decides to reduce its demand for fuel. Again, we are considering an individual household. It's micro, the chop C off. A trade union decides to go on strike. Again, it's talking about a particular trade union in a particular industry. Again, you will chop D off. B says a government decides to increase interest rates. Yes, we're talking about the interest rates at the macro level, at the entire level of the economy. We're studying of the whole, the interest rates affect the entire economy. So it has to be B. What has to be B? Learn to see the key terms being highlighted in each MCQ. See, they've highlighted the word not in this MCQ. So pay attention to the words in the MCQ and the hint is already there in the question. All right. Number 5. What is a feature of a market in equilibrium? Now, what do you mean when a situation of equilibrium? Equilibrium means when demand is equal to supply, right? When there is neither an excess nor a shortage exists. Neither a situation of excess nor a shortage. The demand is equally meeting supply, right? So demand exceeds supply, no. No profits are earned, no, that's not a situation of equilibrium. The markets will clear, yes, exactly. The demand is equal to supply, right? So 5 has to be C. Number 6, the diagram shows the supply for a good. Vertical axis shows the price. The horizontal axis shows the quantity. What is the name and cause of the movement from X to Y? Now, what is happening? It's a single supply curve and there is a movement along the supply curve, right? Now, you were initially at a point X and now you are moving towards Y. So, you are moving forward. Whenever you are moving forward on the same curve, that has to be an extension, right? You're moving forward, that's an extension. So, you can chop A and B. Why? Because both A and B are talking about contraction in supply. So, you can chop A and B, right? C says C and D both are talking about extension of supply. Now, the second part is saying an extension of supply caused by a decrease in demand or an extension of supply caused by an increase in demand? Yes, it has to be an increase in demand, right? Because that's an increase in demand which is actually causing the level of supply to rise, because the producers are going to look at the surge in demand and they are going to comply, right? So 6 has to be D, an extension of supply caused by an increase in demand. All right, number 7. Number 7 shows in the diagram which supply curve has the perfectly inelastic supply. All right, so there are 4 curves given and you need to find out which supply is actually talking about a situation of perfectly inelastic supply. All right, C, the diagram C is a situation of perfect unitary price elasticity of supply. So this is unit PEC, right? All right. A is a demand curve. A2 is a demand curve. A is a demand curve. All right. D is a situation of what? Perfectly elastic supply. And B is perfectly inelastic supply. So the correct answer is B. All right. Number 8. Number 8 says the diagram shows the market for petrol, gasoline. SP is the supply of petrol based on the private cost of petrol production, and SS is the supply of petrol based on the social cost of production. Which distance shows the market failure caused by the production of petrol? On the vertical axis, they are showing the price of petrol. On the horizontal axis, they are showing the quantity of petrol. Now, they are saying which distance shows the market failure. Now, what was market failure? Market failure occurs when market forces fail to produce the products that consumers demand in the quantities, in the right quantities and at the lowest possible cost, right? In the right quantities and the lowest possible cost, when the market forces fail to produce it, right? Then a market failure occurs. Now, in this situation, what is actually happening? If you look at closely at the figure, then the private cost to the firm, what is the curve situation showing? SP, right? And SS is the situation that is showing the supply of petrol based on the social cost of production. So, it is showing that the full cost to society is higher. The full cost to society is higher. So the difference between these two curves, SS and SP, this is actually the difference is Q2 and Q1. This distance is showing the market failure, right? This is showing that Q2 and Q1 is the distance that is showing the market failure. All right. So for 8, it has to be C. It is showing the existence of external costs, because we all know that the social cost is equals to private cost plus negative externalities. Plus negative externalities. So the difference between Q2 and Q1 is the existence of negative externalities. That is why the social cost of supplying petrol is higher than the private cost of supplying petrol. All right. It has to be C. Number 9. In a given year, the world output of coal was 3.94 billion metric tons at an average yearly price of $252 per metric ton. Several years later, the world output was 3.66 billion metric tons at an average yearly price of $252 of $120 per metric ton. What might have caused a fall in the price of coal? Now, what happened several years later? The world output of the coal also fell. And also what happened? that the yearly average price also fell from 252 to 120. So now they're saying what might have caused such a fall in the price of coal? That the world output was also falling, yet the average yearly price was also falling. So now what could have been the reason contributing towards this situation? A says almost half of the world coal oil reserve were just in two countries. No, this could not be the situation. You see, this is a situation when the demand for the coal is also falling, which means the consumption of coal is falling, and the price is also falling, right? So the exhaustion of coal seams throughout the world, if the exhaustion of coal seam would have been falling, so this would not be in a situation. In that case, the price would should have been rising, because when the resources are getting scarce, the price tends to increase and not fall. So B cannot be the situation. A could also not be the situation because if the coal reserve would have been in two countries, so the yearly prices would also have been rising. So A and B cannot be the situation. D says the use of coal as a raw material as well as a fuel. If the coal was being used as a raw material as well as a fuel, so there would have been an increase in the demand. So the consumption should have been risen. So the output should have risen and not being fall. Because if there would have been an increase in demand, so people would have been demanding it more. So then the output should have risen and not falling. So D could also not be the situation. Yes, it has to be C, the switch towards renewable sources of energy. That is why the demand has also fallen. And since the demand is falling, the price has also fallen, right? Or people have moved to alternative sources of energy, right? Let's say maybe solar, right? Maybe wind. All right. So now you understand the logic. So 9 has to be C. 10 says a government believes that people eat too much sugar but not enough fruit. Which combination of policies would the government introduce? All right. So if the government decides to curtail on the consumption of sugar, what does it needs to do? Increase the tax or subsidize? Obviously, the government needs to increase the tax if it wants its population to cut down on its sugar level, right? Consumption of sugar. So it has to increase its tax on sugar. So you can chop C and D because they talk about subsidizing the production. What about the fruit? It wants to increase the consumption. So what should it do? It should tax it or subsidize it. Obviously, subsidize its production. Merit good. So 10 has to be B. Use reasoning and you will easily get to know which is the correct answer. 11. Which row shows a characteristic of money and not and a function of money? Which row shows a characteristic of a money and a function of money? So they've given two parts in the table, and under each heading, they've put in the characteristics and the function. Then you need to pick out the correct option, which is the correct one. A talks about acceptability is the characteristic and function of exchange is medium of exchange. All right. Yes, that's the correct answer. But then let's look at the other option and then I'll tell you why it's A. Look at D and C. So you see under C and D, under the heading of functions, what are they saying? They are saying portability and bank deposits. So portability and bank deposits are not the functions. Portability is a characteristic and bank deposit is not a function. So it is incorrect. They have put it incorrectly. They classified it in incorrect function. So you can chop C and D that way only. By the way, what were the functions of the money? Come on, recall it for me. Medium of exchange, store of value, means of default, payment, and unit of account, right? So if you look at the functions, medium of exchange and measure of value, both are the functions over here. But now let's look at the first part of the table. Under the characteristic, one says acceptability, the other says cash. Cash is not a characteristic of money. Acceptability and is the characteristic and medium exchange is the function. So you see, you need to satisfy both part of the table. This is the reason why A for 11, A is the correct answer. All right. So 11, A. Number 12. When a central bank act as a lender of last resort to a commercial bank. Come on. When would commercial banks be seeking help of the central bank? Yes. When a commercial bank faces a liquidity crisis. So in the end, who's gonna turn over to? The central bank. All right. So 12, it has to be A. It goes to a lender of a last resort when it faces a liquidity crunch. right? That means it's hinting a troublesome situation. That is why it goes to the central bank. All right, 13. What is likely to increase the bargaining power of trade union? So in which situation do you think the trade union is going to rise in its power? When the economy is experiencing rising cyclical unemployment? No, that would be a situation negating the power of the trade union. The trade union would be in a troublesome situation in that scenario because people would be unemployed. So there would have be a weakening in their power. So it cannot be A. B says when the labor market moves from long-term to short-term contracts of employment. So if they move from long-term to short-term contracts of employment, so it will be easier for the firms to lay off workers in. So it would not be in their favor. C says when the price elasticity of demand for the product is price elastic. So if the price elasticity of the demand for the product is price elastic, so a little increase in the product of the price of the product would cause a drastic fall in the demand. So it cannot be possible in that situation, right? It can only be in the situation in option D, when the trade union supplies all the labor required by the employer. Yes, when the trade union is responsible for the supplying of the labor, that is the situation where it's sort of going to enjoy a situation of monopoly, and it is going to dictate the employers on their own terms, right? So this is a situation in which the trade union will be strong in power. So for 13, it has to be D. Number 14. What is a likely reason for firms do not grow in size? Now, what do you think? Why would firms not grow in size? That firms would want to grow, but what is the likely reason firms do not grow in size? External diseconomies of scale occur at high levels of output. B says internal economies of scale occurs at high levels of output. C says internal economies of scale occurs at high levels of output, and D says internal diseconomies of scale occur at low levels of output. Internal economies of scale occur at low levels of output. No, this cannot be the situation. Internal economies of scale occurs as when the firms grow in size, and when the firms grow in size, the output level increases. So as the output level increases, internal economies is experienced. So this cannot be the reason. And because internal economies of scale occurs as the firm increases the levels of output. B says the internal economies of scale occur at high levels of output. So this is the reason, this is the reason why they grow. But they're saying what is not a reason that they grow. You chop it off. External diseconomies of scale occur at high levels of output. External diseconomies of scale is not caused by, it's caused when the entire industries grow, right? So this would not be a reason. D says internal diseconomies of scale occur at low levels of output. Yes, this is a situation that yes, the firms do want to grow in their size, but what is happening that only at low levels of output only they are having problems with respect to their cost of production, that they've just started on the production level, but in the initial stages only that the average cost of production is rising. This is the reason why that though they want to grow in size, but they aren't able to grow in size. Now you understand? 14 has to be D. All right, number 15. Number 15 shows, they've given you a table which shows the activities of 4 firms. Now, firm 1 is a shoe manufacturer, firm 2, website design, firm 3, shoe manufacturer, firm 4, shoe retailer. Which combination of firms would be an example of horizontal integration? Now, we all know that horizontal integration is the merger of firms producing the same product and at the same production stage. The same product at the same production stage. So now, which 2 firms could be at the same production and the same production stage? Yes, shoe manufacturer in both the scenarios. So firm 1 and 3, right? 1 and 3, 15 has to be B. But 1 and 2, now what was 1 and 2 showing? 1 and 2 shows shoe manufacturer and website design. So 1 and 2 is an example of what? 2 unrelated business. 1 is shoe manufacturer and 2 is website design. So this is an example of conglomerate, a merger between firms producing different products. So this is talking about conglomerates. 2 and 4. 2 is website design. And this is again a shoe retailer. Again, this is conglomerates. 3 and 4. 3 and 4 is talking about a shoe manufacturer and a shoe retailer. Why it can't be 3 and 4? This is talking about vertical integration. This is talking about a vertical merger. Vertical merger, now it could either be backward or forward. If it is 3 merging with 4, moving towards the outlet, so that's a vertical merger forward. And if you're moving towards the supply, towards the provision of the raw materials, so then it's a vertical merger forward. Vertical integration backwards. All right. So now you understood why it can't be D, why it can't be C, and why it can't be A. So it has to be B. 15 has to be B. All right.